Alright, so I just wanted to kind of make a video um, that kind of describes what my experience has been, um, kind of as a way just to explain to everyone else um, what's been going on, and as well as kind of give a different perspective than most perspectives that are out there. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube that are kind of um, starting to share a similar perspective, which is interesting. Um, but Anyway, this is kind of like for the Christian community, this is kind of gonna be like testimony. For anyone else, this is kind of a almost a coming out story. Um, so just straight up, I grew up in the church. Um, went to church pretty much all my life. I mean, wasn't one of those kids that was like accepted Christ when I was like 6. I wasn't like super gung ho for Jesus at like that age. Um, but I did go to church pretty much all the time. Um, about middle school, about 14, was when I was starting to think something was different. Um, I wasn't quite sure that like I was gay because I didn't think that growing up in the Christian community, I don't think I even it wasn't even really discussed that much. I don't think I even knew what that was that much. I don't know if that speaks to me being kind of sheltered, but it just didn't. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Like, I kind of had a vague idea of what it was, and I thought, well, I'm friends with a bunch of girls. Maybe I'm interested in some of them. Um, but that just wasn't cutting it. I kind of, in my confusion, just started looking up like guys online, and I'm like, not like to meet, um, but just to kind of try to figure out like, okay, here's a picture of an attractive guy. How do I feel? Um, it was kind of an odd thing, but I realized, okay, that's not what most of the population does. So, at least the male population. So I was like, okay, there's something more to this. But again, Christian community, I knew enough to know that that wasn't going to fly very well. Um, so I just kind of ignored it and moved on. Um, about first couple of years of high school, it wasn't really too bad, but it started to get kind of unavoidable. I'm like, okay, I'm almost positive now that I am gay, and I don't think that the church is going to be too happy. Well, not the church, but like the community I've been in is going to be thrilled with this. So I'm not quite sure how to handle this. So from that point, I just kind of um, that was painful. I was just like, okay, I can't really deal with this. I'm not. I was kind of hope people would ask me like in both middle school and in high school if I was gay because I hung out with a bunch of women. Um, and I always said no because in a way I kind of believed I wasn't. Like if I if I didn't actually date any guys or something, then I wasn't. Or I don't know what was going on in my head, but I was avoiding it, and I was just like, nope, not gay. Um, Ironically, I remember posting a YouTube video a while ago on my gaming channel, and someone asked, you sound gay. Are you gay? And I was like, no, that's a weird question. Like, kind of laughing it off. But looking back at that, now that makes me laugh because I was like, yeah, it totally was. But eventually I was like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. So I needed to talk to someone about it, but, it's not gonna. I didn't want okay, freak out, like, time to get you to church, talk to someone because this is a problem. So I just told a non-Christian friend of mine. That was enough for a while. I mean, we just kind of discussed it. I got a lot of what I was feeling off my chest. But after a while, like, I realized that wasn't enough either. Um, so because I'm kind of like really bad at face-to-face like conversation, not face-to-face conversations, but I'm bad at telling people things that are uncomfortable face-to-face. So I literally just handed my mom my phone and said, "Look at this conversation I've been having with my friend." And that was basically how I came out to her, because I was like, "Just read it, because I don't want to explain this." But of course, after that, I do explain it, which that was not a fun conversation. She was not like angry or anything, but it was kind of like, "What's going on? What are we gonna do?" Like, you know. Um, but shortly after that, I told, like, literally, I think after that conversation ended with my mother, I, in a different conversation, texted one of my Christian friends, and she was supportive. But the reason everyone was so supportive is because I said, "Okay, here's the deal. I'm gay, but because I'm Christian, I have no interest in pursuing a romantic relationship with a man. So I'm just going to avoid that, and I'm going to see how this works for me." Because I felt like that was the best thing to do. It appeared to me in the Bible, homosexuality was a sin. So I was like, okay, it's not a sin to feel this way, but I thought it was a sin to act on it. So I'm like, okay, I just want to act on it. I'll be fine. And that was kind of the plan. My mom took me to see a pastor who I really liked. It wasn't like, "Oh my gosh, we gotta go cure you." It was more like, okay, not you need to, but you should probably talk to someone about this that's knowledgeable about the subject. So I did. And although he obviously was in the camp of homosexuality as a sin, it was a helpful discussion, at least. Like, it kind of, even if I wasn't fully like supported in my like sexuality, it was more, people weren't like turning me away either. It was not, there was no judgment. It was just, here's what I personally believe, and here's how maybe we can help you, which was nice. And that's what I did for several years. I started coming out to people, like, individually, saying, "Yes, I'm gay, but I'm not going to pursue a relationship with a man." I was big in the Christian community, so every time I'd kind of clarify that. And that was the reason why it took me so long to just actually be out to most of the people, because I had to give that disclaimer every time, because I thought everyone would freak out if that disclaimer was not there. So, and I didn't want people getting a bad impression of me, which is kind of funny. But I thought if people knew I was gay, but didn't know that I was kind of celibate almost, that they would think of me as a kind of a bad Christian. So it was important to them. It's important to me that they knew that. After that, though, it just got tiring of having to come out to people like one by one by one by one. So eventually I just was like, I'm done. I posted just like this whole kind of explanation on Facebook and said, "I'm gay for this, for non-Christians, don't freak out, because whatever, like, I'm not pursuing a relationship with a man." And I was like, for non-Christians who are supporting gay marriage and thinking, "What are you doing? You're lying to yourself. Like, what's going on?" Like, yes, I could make my identity about being gay, but I don't want to do that. I'd rather have my identity in being a Christian. And so that kind of satisfied pretty much everyone, thankfully. Like, the responses I got to that were great. It was all supportive. Like, one of the most viewed and commented like posts I've ever written on Facebook. So things were pretty good in that camp for a while, but again, things were not going great, and I started, about my last year of college, getting super, super depressed. And I thought this was like a different variety of factors. I thought it was just kind of, just the way I was interacting with my friends and how things were going with my roommates and things like that, blah, 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 blah. And then I thought, okay, it's just medical. I went to see a therapist, and I got him like anti-anxiety medication, antidepressant, because I also had kind of some weird anxiety too. And so I got put on that, and it just made me tired. That's about all it did. Made me tired all the time, which I guess if you're sleeping all the time, you don't have time to be anxious. I don't know. So in a weird roundabout way, it was kind of working, but it didn't really solve anything. So I was kind of just trying to figure things out, like, what am I doing? How is this gonna work? I don't think this medication is really doing anything. Like, I seem to be getting kind of better, but I think that's just time. Like, I think I'm out of, like, once I graduate, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of out of this environment. Like, I think I'm getting better because it's just time. And there were some things that were getting better, but I'm still kind of waking up, like, I don't want to, like, go through this day. I mean, I would basically wake up kind of almost not wanting to exist. That seems harsh. It wasn't ever really like, oh, okay, I'm suicidal. It was just like, I have no purpose, which for a Christian to feel seems contradictory. Like, you should feel like you have a purpose. Like, that's almost the point. And so I was like, something is wrong. And, about 5 or 6 years before I hit that point, I had started like being presented with the idea that the Bible didn't actually condemn homosexuality, but I just was not listening to those arguments. I don't know what it was, what about it was. I think I was just so entrenched in a church that didn't agree with homosexuality that I was like, okay, well, their interpretation has to be correct. I mean, everyone thinks this, right? Like, no one would condemn homosexuality if they didn't have to, because that's just mean. So even through that, I just kind of continued on my way. I ignored those arguments. I was thinking, well, my faith is really strong because I could have just totally booked it and ran given those arguments. And to a degree, I mean, that was kind of true. I wanted to find out what I believed. I didn't want someone making that decision for me. But as time went on, I kept seeing more and more people like have these views about homosexuality in the Bible, and I kept getting more and more depressed. So I was like, okay, this seems wrong. There is a point where you do something for Christ and that causes you to suffer, but it just doesn't make sense to have following Christ be the exact reason for your suffering. It just didn't compute with me. And so I was like, I gotta research this. And so there were some articles that had been presented to me before I made that decision, and so I kind of recalled back to those. And then my church, who, while pro-traditional marriage, held a kind of a Bible study night where they discussed the topic. And like I said, although they were pro-traditional marriage, they confirmed a lot of those points that the other articles had made. So at that point, I'm thinking, okay, like, this is getting flimsy, and am I going to be depressed my whole life on something this flimsy? I can only find one verse in the Bible that holds up under scrutiny, that condemns homosexuality. So I can only find one. So from that point, I was like, well, one is enough. I can't just, like, throw that one out because I don't like it. Like, that's what I was thinking. And then, so I was like that for a while. And then I came to a dead end. I was like, okay, I guess I'm kind of out of luck then, because there's still that verse. And so after kind of just waking up depressed like every other day, I was like, okay, I need to look into that verse. And sure enough, looking into that more, yeah, it didn't hold up under scrutiny either. So at that point, I was like, okay, this is eating up too much of my life. It's eating up too much of my joy, and I no longer have the evidence for it. So after about 10 years, 10 years after realizing I was gay, I finally decided I would actually be open to a gay relationship. And that's pretty much actually where I am at this point. Not a whole lot has progressed since then in terms of that decision. It's been difficult kind of resharing that to all the Christians that once were so okay with it, because now they're not so okay. I can understand why. I mean, I held the same view for, 10 years? So I understand it, but going through that now and kind of working through those relationships is not the most fun thing. But other than that, things have been much, much better for me. Been way more motivated to do things that I never would have done. I don't wake up a single day depressed anymore, and I weaned off my medication because it was like I flipped a switch. It was so insane. Like it was just so much better. And so I was initially, praying like, God, if I'm wrong about this, change my mind. And I'm always going to hold that view, like, because I'm not going to sit here and, say I 100% know everything, because I don't. But I think at this point in my life, it feels safer to err on the side of this argument that makes people want to get up in the morning. Because if both arguments seem equally valid, which I personally don't think they do anymore, but if they did, I'm going to pick the one that isn't making gay kids suicidal. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I just, my heart for the LGBT community has kind of grown in that regard, because this seems exciting to me. Like, what I thought would have to be like a discussion like, God loves you, but you're going to have to be celibate or abstain or do this, blah, 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 has now become, God loves you, period. I mean, I don't want that to sound like God didn't love you if you were gay, because that was never the case. But the idea was that he loved you, but didn't want that path for you. But now it just seems so much simpler than that, and I'm very appreciative of that. And like I said, I open to changing my mind, but I don't think I will, and I don't think I want to. I mean, just have to see what the future holds, I guess.